Hey guys, Thomas the Solo Genie here, aka Mustached. I'm here to review the movie Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. If you end up enjoying this full movie review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition, second and third to my Patreon and PayPal where you can help support me directly, and fourth to my Discord server where you can join other YouTubers and collab and talk and do all that fun stuff. And Schilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all of that out of the way, let's get into Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. So, obviously, this marks the sequel to Black Panther, which I had reviewed back before I obtained a more objective lens. Obviously, that movie has a lot more faults. I think a lot more people caught on to the third act primarily, but I haven't seen it in a while, so my score for that movie wouldn't probably hold up to my current standard of how I review movies, very likely, and that is just to be as objective as possible. Of course, I still would say I subjectively enjoyed the first Black Panther movie. As silly as some of its parts were, but, you know, it is what it was. And, in terms of this movie, the sequel, I did feel even initially when hearing about they were going to continue on, just letting it come out when it was going to come out, it did feel a little bit odd as, obviously the main actor, had passed away, and there was like a whole lot of stuff on Twitter about whether or not the people were gonna continue on or let it go, or, you know, all that stuff. And it does seem like they got his family to be like that it's fine, you can move on or whatever. So I guess that's all, you know, on them, their decision. And it does put into question, as someone who's looking at this movie objectively speaking, should this have come out this soon, with what we see happening in the actual movie is definitely still the bigger question at the end of the day. And there are definitely quite a few elements that, at least on a spectacle level alone, definitely would have me saying, yes, I do think that is the case. I do think that this movie clearly needed a little bit more time in the CGI department, with the costume department as well. But those things are, of course, not as high prioritized on when I typically review movies. They're just, you know, they're very surface level review stuff, so I just wanted to point it out as a beginning, sort of yeah, I'm gonna briefly mention it. But throughout the rest of it, again, to be objective, I'm gonna be going over the plot and so on and so forth. With that being said, obviously the movie does open up with Shuri in our little science lab here. And we learn that he is, much like the actor, they keep it very similar, how he had passed away due to a sickness. And they hold a very, you know, celebratory but also saddening ceremony. And I think it's fine. And, you know, the town it's slightly mixed between they're celebrating his life by also grieving it simultaneously, so it's a little bit, you know, even in that regard, I suppose. And the very ending of his little ceremony, his coffin gets lifted into these airships that they have now. And then 1 year passes. So, Wakanda is, in this time frame, still very much in tone with their power source, vibranium, And we see as they have been pulled into this sort of governmental asking of like, aren't you going to share with us our sources? The world is doing we're in pretty dark shit. And the queen essentially retorts that your people have already come at us, and we're going to defend our power source that could lead to even worse things. And how that attaches to our villain squad as well, and we'll get to that as we progress. And we see the warriors attack, and as I said, they bring in the attackers to this little hearing, and the chief says like they could have done worse, but they, being as diplomatic as possible, they brought them there. So I thought that was pretty nifty, I suppose, out of the options that they could have done. Anyways, we have our little... we cut to this little water squad. They're seeking potential and vibranium in the water, and they definitely see some sort of power source, that very power source, but we see the team dying, just slowly but surely, by what I typed here, and I think I pronounced it right, the telecons, I believe what they're called, these blue-skinned people, kind of like, not quite like Avatar blue-skinned people, like not super tall, but like just like almost more humanoid with just blue-skinned, essentially. And they seem to have their own sets of powers, like siren singing. So obviously we see some of the crew dive into the water, but two of our people are getting away by covering their ears and getting on a helicopter, but they tailspin and drop, and we cut away from that pretty quickly as well. So there are some pretty abrupt cuts here in this movie that happen, as we see also the news covering what just happened. So a pretty unnecessary recap, I think. I don't think we needed to see that after the fact of us seeing it. It's, again, pretty unnecessary. But we continue to follow Princess Suri as she's in the lab, and she's talking about how, with some of her crew, how the Black Panther is more of a mantle than a, sort of like the mantle of being Spider-Man, for example, as a comparison. So obviously not the person's name, like Thor is the given name of the individual, so, those differences. Anyways, so she and her mother, the queen, joins her, and brings her out into this little bonfire, and they talk about the loss of her brother and the queen's son, and asks her if she sees him in a way that causes her torment. So I think they keep on this sort of talk about him in a way that makes sense in the context of the characters anyway. And being tormented for a year, I think that makes sense of a time frame still. Anyway. But nonetheless, they are interrupted by a flying man. We are then introduced to our villain of the movie, Namor, who is this guy who can sort of fly and swim. And he sort of passively threatens them with his pure army size. which causes everyone else to fall into council, the Wakanda warriors. The war general of their clan says, we need to kill this guy, or else they're gonna lay out, they're gonna dish it out. So that's sort of the vibe that's getting it up there. So they head up. We follow Shuri and I forget the general's name, but she's the actress that plays Michonne in The Walking Dead. But they call her generals, and I forget her name, but I'll just call her the general to keep it simple. And the two of them talk with Ross. Now, I don't remember this character from the first movie or any other movies. He's just some guy who's associated with the Black Panther crew, I guess. I don't remember him at all, if I'm being quite honest. So how much I really remember of the first movie, so... So we see Shuri wants to step up for this little mission that they are being prompted to do. And so they get brought in to Massachusetts to meet up with this girl who's been making this vibranium metal. I believe they call her Williams in the movie. At least that's her last name, I think. Anyway. So, now that they have our little mission here, they go ahead and they both eventually meet her and say, you need to come with us. So she eventually does so pretty quickly. But it turns out that the feds have already kind of moved in on their location as well. And so she offers, one of them offers her comms so that they could talk despite how being separated they are, and proceed to escape before being attacked. This leads to an immediate car chase where Shuri and the general are like in two different vehicles, and we see Williams take on the sort of Iron Man-esque type of and I believe the name she's prompted with in the credits is like Iron Heart, so that I think that's already confirmed. That's what they're going to try to push her to be. So essentially the next Iron Man, well, not man obviously, but Iron Heart to replace that name. And just to make sure that you know that that's the case, they copy his thing that they did in the first Iron Man movie 1-to-1, where they have her go up close to the stratosphere of the sky and then run out of energy and fall all the way almost to the ground. That is 1-to-1 ripped from the first Iron Man movie, and I remember that because I remember the first Iron Man movie all this time later. And I don't think that this movie wanted you to remember it, but sorry. You got caught, you ripped from another superhero movie. So they're obviously trying to rush her character, as we don't really learn that much about her other than she's super smart. That's like the only quality I know about this character, which also fits Shuri, but she has the packaged deal with her lost brother, obviously. So, now that we have our stakes that they need to protect this Iron Heart, they make their way and leave. But the Toltakans, or the sea folk that I mentioned earlier, they come into the fight, also wanting her. So everyone wants a piece of this little, this action, I suppose. And we see a big, bold fight happen up here, with the general trying her damn best to fight off a lot of these Telecon warriors, but she eventually gets her beat and tossed into the water. But not that quickly. We see like the Slater guy kind of toss her back her weapon after like beating her once. So like it's like a really quick like thing where it's like a gesture of like, oh, this guy's like a more of a warrior type of like, or it's either that or like a very much of a I want to have more action or something. It could be either of those really, because the characters, I don't remember him having dialogue at this point directly. So I think it's a pretty simple way of communicating something to the audience. It's not too complex, but it's nifty to see from time to time of like, clearly this person has like, isn't like a killer, because he could have obviously did it right there, so interesting. At least initially, anyways. And we see them use these smoke bombs to essentially capture Shuri, as well as Williams, as well. After the fact, the agents arrive on the scene, and we see Ross pick up the bracelet. Now, even though he picks it up first, something happens later on where, like, some other woman that's working with him, like, says she tagged the thing off screen. It's super convenient to, like, have her be kept up with the scenario. That's, like, the pacing of this movie, which is, like, just, like, go, 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 go. Pretty consistently throughout the movie after the little memoriam juncture. So after the capture of the daughter, the queen is pissed at the general and says, "You failed me twice in the first movie," which I think I remember that happening. And then here again by losing the daughter. So I'm gonna strip you of your rank, essentially, is this scene. So she goes over to Haiti, or however you pronounce that country name or whatever. And she goes to Nakia, another Wakanda warrior who left, as the best description I can give of this character. And she is quickly given the mission to essentially grab Shuri, who we cut to very briefly in this sea cavern. But we also cut to Mexico for some reason. We have this talk, and I'm not sure what like this scene is like meant to expand upon really. It's just like these two individuals like talking for a bit about something or other. I don't know. So Shuri goes to Namor, and we have a little bit of a flashback. And it cuts back to like 1571, so like obviously way further back. And we hear about his family and how they took the rock and it gave him like different powers. How the father different powers and how the mother didn't do it and how they had a baby, that being him. And then when they took on this burden of like nearly dying, they instead turned blue and were forced to head into the water. But we see Namor, a younger version of him, peek out of the surface, trying to figure out what's going on, and comes across to finding slaves and slavery happening, and he immediately like takes that as like well, this planet sucks. Not even sure where they are in reference to anywhere. If I don't remember the flashback where they end up. Anyway. So Shuri kind of wants to tag along and see what Namor's place is like. And he obliges. He's like, sure. So he takes her around the Telecon underwater city. And I will give credit where credit is due. I think that this portion is simplistic, but I think it gives Namor a little bit more than just your average villain who wants to blow up everything. Or, because, that is sort of his plan. Spoiler alert. That shouldn't surprise anyone. Blow up all the surface land, but I do like this sort of way of having him be a protective, and he sees his little sea land as almost like his own world, is sort of how they put this. So I was like, okay, he gave Namor a little bit of extra something. He's not, I wouldn't say he's the most generic villain. I would probably put him above a lot of the other villains just by this factor alone, to be quite honest, because a lot of the villains are kind of shit in these movies, a lot of the times, with the exception of Thanos, is a very standout villain. At least for the first breach of Thanos, anyway. Anyway, the Queen wants her back no matter what. Her safety comes first, so Nakia is sent in, as I mentioned. And Shuri, despite all of this, still wants peace, so she's trying to figure it all out, So, I kind of do like that. That she's playing the whole diplomatic angle throughout the movie, as we see pretty consistently. So I actually do think that's a pretty nifty quality about her, and it's sort of that way, coming from a very scientific world, but still attempting to reach very diplomatic answers. And this is, of course, where we hear that Namor wants to attack the rest of the land, because he fears, the land weapons will, reach what, Ironheart is getting at, that equipment level from the human surface. So he's very afraid that their underwater land will be hit inevitably. So it comes from, at least for Namor, I will say this, it comes from a place of a defensive strategy. But he goes on the offense regardless, so, anyway. So we have another little short meeting with Ross, where he gives some updates to the Queen about what's going on the surface. And we see more of Namor approaching the Queen and updating her about what's going on with, what they're prepared to do and how he has the daughter currently. But while he's doing that, Nakia, while sneaking in, goes into the attack. And they are successful and they lift up into the ship. So Namor sees that they have attacked and killed one of his Telecon warriors. Excuse me. So he goes to his people and says, well, we're under attack now, so we need to, essentially go to the attack. All the while, Nakia goes to the ex-general at this point in the movie. But just as she does, the water flows of Wakanda are pushed in as they make their way pretty easily into Wakanda, despite having all those force fields, so they came up from underneath the water. And this was just this came in pretty close timing of when Shuri was able to get back and be like, we need to increase the water defenses. And we even see some of the people manage to get there first, but it doesn't prevent, there's just not enough time to prevent the the attacks coming in from underneath them as the floods come in after the fact. We even see them doing their siren bit a little bit here once again, and the war presses on. So once again, Namor arrives on the land. We see him fight, or very briefly, the sort of the leader of the warrior clan. Breaks his armor pretty quickly. So Shuri tries to get to Namor, and the queen is pulled under the water among a bunch of other people. And in the process of this scourge attack, she loses her mother in the process. So now she has lost two people in relatively short time. So the Warriors chief checks in on her after the fact, and all the while we cut to Ross being visited by Val, and she, as I mentioned before, she tagged the beads to be like keeping in on the intel. Meanwhile, Shuri tells the ex-general, like, I built this for you. So she calls it the Midnight Angel. So I'll refer to that as that character from now on, just to keep it with the what the updates of the names are, I guess. So we cut to a little mini montage of her, Shuri, and Williams working on synthesizing their power source through the ceremony thing they did in the first movie, and apparently in the first movie, like, Killmonger, like, destroyed them all or something. Anyway, she's managed to synthesize one anyways, and speaking of Killmonger, that's where we see him in this movie, as he appears in her vision and tells her that, the first Black Panther, he is very intentive, and I was, well, at least according to him, he was getting shit done. So which way are you going to go about doing this? Are you going to try to be passive or aggressive? Essentially is how I would boil this sort of decision down to a very simplistic level. All the while, she returns to her people after the fact, after she sees she got some strength on her. So she clearly got the powers even after that little sequence. And she goes back to her other people. She arm wrestles the war chief, and he's like, yeah, you're in. You're cool, get in. So now the people know that she is the new Black Panther. She's took on the mantle officially at this point of the movie. And she clearly wants revenge on Namor at this point. So, all the while, she and Nakia have a short little prayer moment here. And then they set up for their little water attack. They head out in this huge ship that they have. But Ironheart, is also already set up here at this point in the movie as well. She's already built her armor. We already saw her do the Iron Man fall, and now she has the full design. It looks a bit wonky, a little bit. This is like one of the suits I was mentioning at the beginning that seems like it could have used a little bit more time, like making it look a bit flashier or something, or a bit more sleek. I don't know, something about this design definitely feels a little bit off. But again, I don't think it's too relevant to the movie, as I mentioned at the beginning, so we'll just move on. So Shuri gets on board, and we see that as their ship is out there, we see Namor's people attack from below and working their way up, and we see that she is cleverly trapped him in this room that has like the heat things coming in from the room, and he kind of notices that at a certain point. But his people are still trying to counter from below as well. So they have a little fight in there while the Wakandan warriors are having a little bit of a struggle. But they're holding on pretty much. They lose some people along the way. Some, just people, unnamed people. And all the while they get sent into the desert. Or like a beach land. Her plan was to go to the desert, which again really shows Shuri's level of strategy, again, pretty consistently throughout the movie. Despite this movie's pacing faults, I think that while Shuri's character arc for, as little wiggle room as it has, I think that they keep her at least pretty consistent about her strategy despite wanting revenge. So yeah, there's that. She goes on the attack. And Midnight Angel gets her rematch too against that big guy that I mentioned. Namor stabs the new Black Panther in the chest. But she is able to push it out and flip over him and use her ship's fuel busters by saying Wakanda forever. I don't know why that activates the fuel burners for the ship. I think it's kind of stupid that that's the case, but okay. So yeah, it burns the black back of Namor's back, and essentially leaves him pretty not dead, but, hurt. And she essentially kind of says, like, hey, we could keep doing this or whatever, or we could help you and you can help us protect our properties, enough war. So again, keeping consistent, because she saw her mother at some point after she passed in the ethereal Wakanda world, and saying, show him the real you, which is essentially what more prompted her to do this. So she accepts that fate instead and spares Namor at this point in the movie. So Namor has his clan stand down, and she has her people stand down as well. So it's sort of a draw at the end of this movie-ish. I would say the Wakanda's clearly lost a little bit more here, based on the attack. And we see the war chief do the challenge thing from the first movie, but we don't know who that's in reference to. Meanwhile, we see that Ross is under arrest for secrets or whatever, I guess. But it doesn't matter because Midnight Angel goes to save him. And as Shuri goes off and visits Nakia, and she goes off to the shore, she thinks of one final moment. We get another little brief reprieve of her thinking of the previous Black Panther, and as she thinks of him fondly, that is where the movie ends. And that was Black Panther Wakanda Forever. So I will say that the pacing of the movie is definitely its biggest hurdle to get over. The characters are pretty rushed here, particularly the new character. They have to really speed her up, and it's very clear for Ironheart here that they're trying to do the super quick Iron Man parallel at the beginning, as I mentioned. She's also just that smart, sort of, I guess, on the similar levels to Shuri level of smart. And sort of have her have a little moment at the end here as well. Shuri, her journey is in a very similar caliber. She has a bit more going on as the main character, with the loss of her brother, wanting revenge. There's that aspect. There's the aspect of her still seeking diplomatic or safer opportunities to resolve things. And then there's the mother, who we see get upset and trying to deal with things in the best way she can conceivably know how to do so until her time inevitably comes at the movie. And outside of that, it does seem like, again, these action set pieces are the majority of the movie. And I will say that, yes, Namor is a simplistic villain. I don't think that's a deep criticism at all to say. But as I mentioned already, I do think that having that little additional thing does give him at least something to work with. He has his own, underwater land, and he sees that as his world, as I'm kind of paraphrasing here. And I do think that there is something to that in comparison to Wakanda. So I think it's a pretty decent matchup, all things considered. But nothing crazy, I would say. So in terms of a score, I'd probably lean towards a 5 or a 6. And I say a 5 only because of the pacing and the, really quick, you're getting these really, really short character moments. And the only really time you see the characters being able to breathe is literally at the end of the movie. And the beginning segment, after the little, Marvel logo memorial segment. Besides those two moments, it doesn't feel like there's any parts of this movie that feel like the pacing ever takes its time to settle, let things rest, let the situation just, let the characters have a moment to talk about, what's going on. It feels like there's just a lot of movement, in this movie. And there definitely was a weird, unnecessary little segment. So yeah, I would stick with a 5 out of 10, I think. I think that's as fair as I can be. But I mean, for Marvel, I would say that, especially in Phase 4, I think that's actually pretty decent, to be fair, to be as high as a 5 out of 10. So yeah, I think it's okay. Again, I think they could have really spent a little bit more time on it, both in terms of a technical aspect, obviously, as well as really tightening up other parts of the script to give characters a little bit stronger moments within the narrative / plot. Outside of those two things, I think, again, it's very standard affair with, little bits of pieces of, okay, this character has something going on, that being the main character and the main antagonist she has a lot more going on, obviously, and he has, a very simplistic added thing other than just wants to destroy the world. So, yeah. I think that covers just about everything. So, there it is, my full review of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, and if you ended up enjoying that full review, once again, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers get their own tab. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and the channel directly. And fourth to my Discord server, where you can join and potentially collab with other YouTubers, talk with them, chat it all up there in the Discord server. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye!